Oh, boy. So what, we're going to be there in 5 years still. It's just never going to end. A meat grinder they feed troops into, and out of it comes oil pipelines and opium.
Well, I'm hopeful that the American people, if they listen to people like us, finally, I think I have a basic faith in the American people. They're good sense, and I think there's a limit to what they will tolerate. The big challenge, of course, Alex, and the reason I come on your show and applaud what you're doing is that you're one of the few people that tell it like it is. You're not under the fawning corporate media, and that's what we need. We need people to listen and then act, and I think action is necessary right now.
Well, again, for those that just joined us, I'm not heaping laurels on you, sir, but people need to know you've been right. A full year and a half before it came out with Cy Hirsch and New Yorker magazine, and was confirmed that Cheney wanted to paint up patrol boats blue and have Navy SEALs attack our own ships, and that was confirmed. Bush, of all people, said, no, we're not doing that. But it just shows the mental level. You came on air and said, well, if I was Cheney and Bush, they'll probably paint up some ships like Iranians. This is on record on the show, and attack our ships. And later I said, did you have inside intel? You just said, no, that's how these people work. And now I want to shift gears and ask the difference between Cheney and Bush and Obama. It's now come out, and I have it here in my stack, Washington Post, CNN, Business Insider. Cheney had gotten his way, we would have gone to war with Russia, and it's basically admitted in Ron Asmus's new book, who was inside these meetings, that NATO was part of it. They launched the attack, back through Georgia against South Ossetia on 888, and that Cheney wanted to go ahead and have nuclear war. I mean, that really shows these are completely unstable people, like Curtis LeMay or somebody. And so that mindset, has that carried over into Obama? Because when I see him out there, at least at some levels, supporting Israel and Netanyahu, saying they may hit Iran, can you speak to the mindset in the Pentagon? Is any of this Cheney stuff left there versus what's going on in the White House now? And then how that posture, the posture you believe from your research is there, how that's going to affect what goes on in Iran and now North Korea?
Well, Iran, I think, is the most pressing issue. It's the one that the president has most difficulty with because the pressure from what is called the Likud lobby, other people call it the Israel lobby, is immense. And that's been demonstrated recently by a whole string of events. Dennis Blair, a former four-star admiral who headed up the national intelligence setup in our country, was canned last week. Why? Well, there were a bunch of misadventures with not catching potential terrorists, but the basic reason, in my view, that he was canned was that he had the temerity 15 months ago to appoint a person to be the chief analyst in our government, the chief intelligence analyst, a person named Chaz Freeman, who made the very bad mistake of saying publicly that he thought Palestinians also had rights as human beings in addition to Israelis. Now, what happened was he was appointed by Dennis Blair. This is not a cabinet appointment. This is within his own little purview, head of the National Intelligence Council, Chaz Freeman. He was appointed in the morning, and he had lunch with David Broder of the Post, and it was, David said, aren't you expecting a lot of opposition? And Freeman said, it's going to sail through. Then Blair got up saying about the appointment and saying he was a terrific person. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Senator Chuck Schumer, Senator Lieberman from Connecticut, had gotten to Rahm Emanuel in the White House and said, we can't have this guy. He's too unbiased. He doesn't react with knee-jerk solidity to the interests of Israel. And so Blair had to go back to Freeman and say, I'm going to have to ask you to ask me to withhold your nomination, to reverse your appointment. It wasn't like a nomination. He had been appointed. So he served as National Intelligence Director for 8 hours, okay? Now, that is unprecedented. I've seen a lot of stuff in my 50 years in Washington, but never before have I seen the Israel lobby or any other lobby derail an appointment that had already been made in the bowels of the intelligence community. Now, to the extent that...
So you're saying Israel's got pull that our government doesn't even have?
Well, that seems to be the case. I had hoped it would be different with Obama, but it's not. Now, the other thing that's really important is this. We broached an agreement to Iran, which would have resulted in about 70% of their low-enriched uranium being shipped out of the country for reprocessing for their medical reactor. Okay, that was October of last year. Now that didn't work out, partly because of insurgents in Iran, funded by the U.S., Israel, and Pakistan.
Ray, I'm sorry, we got a break. Stay there. I'll see if I can twist your arm to stay 5 into the next hour, so we have at least 10 minutes of airtime to finish up on Iran, then briefly North Korea. Stay with us.
Happy to.
Some other news. We had Congressman Ron Paul on yesterday. Ron Paul said inside sources told him Fed is panicking at mass awakening. And if Ron Paul says it, you can bank it. That's up on GCNlive.com, the article by Paul Joseph Watson. That's GCNlive.com. Okay, Ray, we've only got about 4 minutes here, 5 minutes in the next segment. Again, very thankful for your time. You were finishing up with the situation with Iran. Netanyahu says they may strike. Talking to folks in intelligence, out of intelligence, with your ear to the ground. Is it on the front burner again? And what's the time frame? And then C, what will happen if we do attack?
Well, to address your last point first, Alex, it would be a catastrophe if we and or the Israelis attacked Iran. Among other things, they have the option of closing the Strait of Hormuz, through which about a third of the the traded oil goes through for the world. And talk about a recession. Well, it would throw the world into a tailspin, given the dependence on oil. The situation right now is highly interesting. The bottom line is that the Israel lobby has shown its power once again. And now get this. This is the important conclusion, at least from my analysis. Neither Israel nor the United States is terribly worried about a nuclear weapon in Iran. If they were, they would have welcomed this new tripartite deal between Brazil, Turkey, and Iran, which provides for fully half of the low-enriched uranium to go out of country into Turkey. Now, that's the uranium that would have to be refined to a higher degree to make a bomb. So if half of Iran's uranium is going out of country for a whole year, wouldn't you think that the Israelis and the U.S. would be happy about that?
Yeah, Iran is buckling. I mean, every time, going back, as you know, 5 years, they try to be friendly, they get slapped down.
Yeah. Well, what happened, as soon as this deal was announced, Hillary Clinton got up and said, no, we're not going to go that route. That's naive. What we're going to do is sanctions in the UN, and we're persuaded the Russians and the Chinese, and we're going to just get these guys. Well, that's really interesting, because you know what? The President of the United States encouraged the head of Brazil and the head of Turkey to work out this deal. And we have that in a letter from President Obama. You won't find this in the New York Times, by the way, but if you look in the Sao Paulo press there in Brazil, you'll see the text of a letter from the President of the United States, which says to the President of Brazil, from our point of view, a decision by Iran to send half of its low-enriched uranium abroad would generate confidence and reduce regional tensions by cutting Iran's stockpile.
So we're about to break, but to interrupt, correct me if I'm wrong, basically it's showing there's a fight going on inside the Obama administration and that they were trying to do something reasonable, but somebody else has come in and said, Yeah,
that's not going to wash in November, they said, because the lobby will object to that.
That is incredible.
It really is, and you won't find this in the New York Times, will you? But that's the text of the president's letter to Brazil. And Hillary Clinton and the other neocons and those particularly susceptible to influence from the Likud lobby have put the kibosh on what should be a very, very favorable, very encouraging development, namely for Iran to ship half of its uranium out of country.
So we're coming back with only 5 more minutes, but just fast when we come back. What's the game plan then?
The game plan is regime change. That's what they care about. And anything that will make Ahmadinejad look more reasonable or make Iran look better, they're against, because they don't care about the uranium. They care about regime change.
We'll talk about North Korea coming up.